Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for a few minutes of your time. We're going to be going through the 10 mistake presentation. When we applied for and received the grant, it was based around helping entrepreneurs better understand what does it take to qualify for funding. There are many entrepreneurs that either have ideas or even startup businesses. Some are existing businesses. Most want to need capital, but so very often they feel that they don't have access to it. Well, we're going to show you the roadmap today that would allow any small business to get at least 250,000. At any point, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just type it into the Q&A box of Zoom and we'll get to it as soon as possible. So let's go ahead and get started on the 10 mistakes that will get you denied for business funding. And we'll also learn about how the U.S. Startup Grant can help you access a minimum of 250,000. You do see our website, the bottom right-hand corner, chapmanloanprogram.org, and that's where you get additional information and also be able to enroll if you chose to. All right. So let's start with, why does this matter? Why is it that we're spending a few minutes together this Monday morning to discuss this? Well, what we know is that in many cases, lenders and credit issuers will automatically decline applications if their underwriting standards are not met. So if there's this formula for approval, it would kind of make sense to understand what that formula is so we can get approved. Because if we don't meet the underwriting standards, we won't be approved, we'll be declined. What we often see is that there's often the separation between the consumer mindset and the business mindset. I'm asking you today, during our few minutes together, to look at this through the eyes as a business owner, because businesses operate different typically than consumers do. And so we need to think about the credibility, the fundability of your business. We're not so much worried about your personal credit and your personal history. We're talking about having a fundable business because we're trying to get business funding. Now, some people say, well, I've got a brand new business. I can't get funded, or it can't be strong. That is a ridiculous assumption. That's a wrong assumption. That's a limiting assumption. So I really think it's safe to say only a fool would think that a business's credibility, collateral, and solvency won't affect your access to funding. But the good news is we can legally and ethically make even a brand new business credible for funding. And we're going to show you how over the next few minutes. So in short, if you just want to cut it to the chase, we need to be credible on paper. We need the business to be credible on paper. And we'll show you exactly what that means, because we're going to go through the 10 mistakes. So the opposite of each mistake is, let's do it right so we can get funded. Now, again, we applied for the grant, received the grant. So we have a lot of resources, many of which are free, to help you address these issues. So what I don't want to have happen is we start to go through this and you think, well, oh my gosh, I'm coming up short. I don't meet these criteria. It's not going to work for me. It will work for you. We can help anyone navigate this simple process in 30 to 60 days. All right, so mistake number 1, business address. I need you to open your mind a little bit and listen to what we're going through, and maybe use less of your prior assumptions and expectations about what lenders are looking for. So let's talk about the business address to begin with. We need a real physical address. It needs to be a unique address that's not shared with other businesses. No, a home address won't work. A post office won't work. We need a real address. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to work from that address. We're just talking on record that the official address of our business is considered legitimate. Now, furthermore, most lenders now are going to ask for a copy of your lease. So it's not just saying, oh, here's my address. We're going to need to prove it up. Now, virtual addresses were the big deal for a while. WeWork just filed bankruptcy last week. Regis, which is owned by IHG, has been around for quite a while. So there are some big entities that can get you a commercial address, but we need a unique commercial address, one that is not shared, not a shared suite number. And what we're seeing in many cases, banks and like Dun & Bradstreet are pushing back even on those virtual addresses that are often shared addresses. So those are not credible. Also keep in mind that not all lenders operate nationally. There are some that work in certain portions of the country, and we'll come back to this when we get to mistake number 10. But the Chapman Fund is a great source of funding. Only will go up to 250,000 granted, but it's in a specific geographic area. But we can help you qualify for that, so no worries. All right, and so with that being said, we can definitely provide you a free business address. No worries about that. So mistake number 2, entity selection. So we need to have a business entity. Now, it is true that some sole proprietorships can get funding, but in general, we need to have a true business address. And that usually falls under the category of either a corporation, C Corp or S Corp, or LLC, as opposed to just a sole proprietorship or a partnership. If our goal is to actually get investors and get equity-based capital, they typically prefer a C corporation. So there's no pass-through income. But regardless of that, we need to have an entity to qualify for optimal funding. And your entity should typically be in the same state as your business address. So we should file in the same state as your business address. However, we don't have to worry about that being in the same state that you live in. Some people think, oh, if I live in Massachusetts, then I have to form a business in Massachusetts, for example. That's not true at all. That's not a barrier. So actually, through the grant, we'll actually pay for the Secretary of State filing fees, so you have a new compliant business entity. Okay, so we've covered 2 mistakes. Let's move on to the third mistake, which is a business name mismatch. One of the most common reasons for funding applications being denied is that the lender can't find your business easily online. So we need to have one business name that we're using consistently online, on our applications, with the Secretary of State, with the federal government, the IRS for EIN, which we'll talk more about in a moment. So we need to have a business name that we use consistently. Now, if you have a lease or utility bills or bank statements, again, we want the business name to be accurate. So often I'll talk to entrepreneurs and they might have a couple different projects and they'll kind of converge them. Well, it's fine to have own multiple businesses and even be working on multiple capital raise projects, but we need to treat each separate. And so in mistake number 3, we want to make sure that we're using the business name consistently across all documentation. Kind of makes common sense, but often we see this as an issue that has to be cleaned up. Through the grant, what we're doing is actually providing, and we'll talk about it here when we conclude in a few minutes, the A to Z to make sure everything is accurate. If you're going to be using an existing entity, there may be some cleanup that's necessary. All right, mistake number 4. The mistake is not being in good standing. So in other words, we want to be in good standing. What does that mean? Well, in each state, the Secretary of State or a similar organization tracks if the business is in good standing, if it's open, if it's active, if it's compliant. We need to make sure that's the case. Now, many states, there's actually annual reports that have to be filed. In some states, we operate out of Texas, where there is no state income tax unless you generate more than $1 million a year. But in some states, you have taxes you have to pay each year to be in good standing. So we need to make sure that our business reflects to the outside world that we're in good standing. If not, we need to clean it up, or again, through the grant, we can create a new entity that is fully compliant with all these measures. Now, I made reference earlier to an EIN. This is the Federal Taxpayer ID number. It's a unique number assigned to the business, kind of like what a Social Security number is to a person, an EIN is to the business. We're going to need this to go open our business bank account. And yes, we absolutely need a business bank account and to build out our business credit profile, which we'll be talking about on 2 more slides coming forward. It's that important. So we do need to make sure that all agencies, banks, any issuers of credit have your business listed properly with the correct EIN. So you see this consistently. We need to have valid and consistent data used for each entity, including the EIN. All right, mistake number, number 5. We definitely want to pursue business funding, and that's the gist. If you just want personal loans, then we don't need to jump through all these hoops. But business funding is typically preferable to personal funding because, number one, it stays off your personal credit. Secondly, it's based upon the business's credibility. And thirdly, businesses have much greater borrowing capacity than individuals do. Okay, with that being said, let's move on to mistake number 6. We're halfway there. Business credit reporting agency profiles. We often see that the applicants are declined because they've not set their business up properly with the business credit reporting agencies. Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, Equifax Business are the 3 main ones. Now, what's true is those business credit bureaus will pull from public data and may create kind of a subset of a profile just because you filed your business with the Secretary of State, which we talked about earlier. But typically that information is incomplete and is not allowing the business to be ready for funding. So with that, we need to make sure that we have our profiles set up properly and optimally, and we'll help you with that for free. But what does that mean? We need to make sure we have the right industry code, the right address, the right owner, the right information about the business, because what Dun & Bradstreet, for example, what they pull from the public database gives them enough to create a file, but it's almost always woefully inadequate. It doesn't make your business look as strong as it could or should. So that is mistake number 6. Thus, conversely, that's the 6th thing that we're going to work on together to make sure that your business looks strong. All right, now we've talked about getting the business credit profile on mistake 6. Now we need to build it up. So the mistake is not doing that, having inadequate business credit scores. So we want to have at least credible business ratings with Dun & Bradstreet and Experian Business, because we know there are different credit bureaus for businesses than there are for individuals, and we need to put forth effort with a very specific set of steps to look credible on the business side. Now, business credit scores, again, are different than personal credit. They go from 0 to 100. The higher, the better. But the truth is, as long as we're 80 or above, we're good to go. Each business credit bureau has their own terminology. Dun & Bradstreet has what's called a PAYDEX score. So when you first start a business, you have no PAYDEX score. You don't have a bad score. You don't have a good score. You have no score. So that doesn't show the lending world that you're a responsible manager of credit, your business. We want to fix that. There's Experian Business. They have it's still on the 0 to 100 scale, but it's called the Intella score. Now, when you first start a business, Experian Business will give you a failing score around a 27 or 28 out of a 0 to 100. Looks horrible, even though you've done nothing wrong. We need to very strategically add primary trade lines so the business looks credible to outside lenders. And of course, we're going to help you do that. We want to get up to at least an 80 on at least Dun & Bradstreet and Experian Business. And again, the grant covers that. So you're not paying money to get that. All right, mistake number 8, not having credible financial statements. This is one that I run into probably more often than all the others combined. I'll talk to business owners of small businesses, And they'll say, no, I don't have financials. I don't need those. Or I'm a new business. It doesn't matter to me. Well, if what we're trying to do is get your business ready for funding, then it very much matters. We need to be able to produce financial statements, such as a balance sheet. It shows assets and liabilities of the business. Again, a lot of entrepreneurs will want to cop out. They'll say, well, my business doesn't have any assets or liabilities, so I don't need a balance sheet. That's not true. That just means that you're not prepared. We need to produce a balance sheet. And the fact that you don't have liabilities is a good thing, right? It means your business doesn't have a bunch of debt. But we're going to help you add assets to the balance sheet, which we'll get to here in a minute. So we have strong financials. We need a balance sheet. We need an income statement, also called a profit and loss statement. Those are the two most important ones. Yes, even if we just formed a business yesterday, each week we're forming anywhere from 80 to 100 new businesses on average per week. We just processed a bunch of those over the weekend. Every one of those clients within the next 2 or 3 days will have strong financials. So don't fall into the mind trap, the mistake to think, well, it's a new business, I can't look credible, can't have good financials. That is not true. So we'll show you how to do that. And then from the Opportunity Fund, a couple of you have already asked in the Q&A about the Opportunity Fund. So it's a bit of a unique instrument where we can put deposits into your business bank account each day. So not only do we have a strong balance sheet and strong income statement, as we were talking about earlier in the slide, but also so we have good activity on the business bank account. But we have limited time. When we're giving this presentation, often we do it in person at churches, chambers, co-working groups, and so forth, where we have an hour. Since we're online, we only have 30 minutes, so I apologize. We're going through quickly. But the bottom line is we will help you for free because of the grant build credible financial statements. All right, 2 more mistakes to go, and then we'll wrap it up. Mistake number 9, collateral. Well, what in the world is collateral? Many business owners don't have collateral, but most business loans will require or at least prefer collateral. Well, what is collateral? Collateral are those assets that show up on the balance sheet. Remember, on mistake number 8, we talked about the importance of having a balance sheet. Well, collateral are the assets that we have. Well, what are examples of assets? Cash, accounts receivable, inventory, equipment, real estate, business automobiles, so forth. We're going to add, and I'll get to it in a moment, but we'll literally add, legally and ethically, collateral on your balance sheet so you qualify. Now, it's true, and I want to make sure you're clear on this. There's many different types of loans and types of credit. Each have their own underwriting criteria. So what I don't want you to walk away from today's brief presentation is to think that there's only one formula to get funding, because in fact, there's many different lenders, and many different lenders have many different types of loan programs. So underwriting can vary, but in general, we need to have collateral. And yes, even startups, but we'll provide the collateral. So it's not a barrier. We will provide the collateral legally and ethically in the form of accounts receivables. Then we'll help you liquidate those receivables to help with cash flow. All right, mistake number 10, having too narrow of an approach. What I just mentioned is that many times entrepreneurs think of just that there's one bucket of money. But imagine that you walk into a high school gymnasium and there's buckets all across the gym floor, and each one has cash, $100 bills in it. And if you could pick up the bucket and look at the bottom of the bucket, there's the requirements. How do you get that bucket? Well, that gym's full of buckets. There's hundreds or thousands of buckets in that gym that we're pretending to look into. Well, that's kind of the way it is for business funding. There's hundreds or thousands of different places to get funding. So we can't just come to the assumption that it's always the same thing that's needed, or that there's just one bucket to go to. That's not true at all. So there are banks and credit unions and alternative lenders. One that I mentioned earlier, I want to bring your attention to more, is the Chapman Fund. The Chapman Fund is from a taxing authority. And I know most of us don't like taxes, but this is where money is going out instead of being paid into. So the Chapman Fund provides a minimum of 30 up to a maximum of 250,000 to start or grow a business. It can be used for fixed assets, new construction, renovations, leased property, equipment, inventory, and working capital. It is outstanding. And that's one of the things that we do is provide geographic access to the Chapman Fund. Because as we talked about all the way back in the beginning, not all lenders or not all sources of capital operate nationally. Some of them are in regions, some in states, some in cities, some in counties. But the bottom line is we're going to cover that. So let's do a summary page here, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers that any of you may have. Obviously, what we're proposing is to help you create a business that's credible on paper to access the capital that you need. If you already have a business, well, now you have a checklist so you know what needs to be met. If you'd like to work with us through the grant, we can form a new business and provide the scope of services shown here on the screen on the left. Our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit. We started in 2016. People often ask, well, how long have you been doing this? This grant, quite frankly, is new, but the nonprofit started in 2016. At that time, I was a high school teacher in Aubrey, Texas. I was teaching high school students accounting 1 and 2. I taught computer programming, and we actually won the UIL state competition for computer programming and came in second a different year. And then also taught what's called BIM, Business Information Management. But the bottom line is this all started when a group of us that were educators said, you know, we're here teaching high school students these important business principles, but out in the marketplace, most entrepreneurs don't know what these 16 and 17-year-olds are learning in our classroom. So we formed the nonprofit in 2016. We received the grant that we're talking about now that allows us to provide the startup business funding package. And so for you to qualify, there are 2 steps. One of which is that you need to go through this curriculum. So obviously you just did. And then second, on chapmanloanprogram.org, it says step 2, it says step 2 engage. You click on that and you can enroll. You're welcome to do so. It used to be that we didn't really require going through this curriculum first, but what we learned is that so many entrepreneurs don't know what they don't know, and so they just sign up and think, okay, I'm ready for funding. Well, we've just covered what we need. We need to have, let's take it from the top here, we need to have a unique business address. Shouldn't have done that, should we? Let me go back. We need a unique business address. We provide that. We need to be filed with the Secretary of State and in good standing. We provide that. We need to have an EIN and a business bank account. We talked about that. We need to have a strong business credit profile. We need to add trade lines under the business credit profile so it shows that we will pay our bills, that our business is credible and it does what it says that it will do. We need to have collateral on our balance sheet. We need to have access to daily deposits. And then we talked about the Chapman Fund. So this is a summary here of what the grant provides. You can go to chapmanloanprogram.org. There is a little bit of additional information. We've covered most of it, but on there, it's a 2-step process to see if you qualify and to participate. Step 1 is to go through the curriculum, which we've just done. So now you know what it takes. And you can determine maybe you're overqualified. Maybe you have a business that already has all of this in place. If so, you don't need this. You can still go to chapmanloanprogram.org, scroll down under resources, and there's a tab to get funding offers right now. No upfront costs, no hard inquiries. Great. Let's skip this if you don't need it and go right to funding. But our experience is that most small businesses don't have these credibility factors. They don't have a good address. They're not in good standing with the Secretary of State. They don't have a strong business credit profile. They don't have collateral, and so they're not fundable. So legally and ethically, that's what we do through the grant. The grant provides $2,500 allocation to each of you up front at the point of enrollment. So again, you can go to chapmanloanprogram.org. If you need additional working capital, we can assist you with that. And again, that's under the resources tab. So our 501c3 nonprofit is now managing this grant funded program. You can reach us via email, you can reach us via phone or text, and then you have our website. So let's get to your questions, comments, concerns. We have 5 minutes before we need to wrap it up. Samantha asked about type of entity, C Corp versus not. We are big fans of C corporations, and if you use it wisely, it'll give you the best benefits, but you could always make your own decision on entity type. The primary point, Samantha, that we're making back on that slide was that we're going to have more limited borrowing capacity if we don't have a true entity, such as if we're operating as a sole proprietor or a partnership that is less credible in the eyes of lenders. But again, nothing that I'm talking about is all or nothing. If you infer that, it's wrong, because there are some sources of capital that we can get for a sole proprietorship. That is a true statement. But if we're talking about how to qualify for $250,000 or more, we need to have a credible business. We need to look good on paper. Bevan asked, does a person have to have a social security number or an ITIN? Nope, not a requirement. You can go right, chapmanloanprogram.org, complete the 2 steps, Bevan, and take care of it. All right, let's see. Aaron's asking about our referral partner program, and that's right, Aaron. So on chapmanloanprogram.org, under resources, there's a link to become a distribution partner. We're looking for what I like to call financial literacy educators, individuals that would like to teach this in person or online to individuals or to groups. We work with hosts. We have a really nice proposal that you could use, and we could get it set up with a church, a library, a chamber, business organizations. The host provides the promotion and gets, quote unquote, the butts in the seats. You teach it. It's obviously through a nonprofit. It's not get rich quick, but you make right at $1,250 for each person that you teach that plugs in. So, I mean, if you taught a class of 20 people, it's a good hour well spent. Normally, this is an hour presentation. If we're doing it in person, try to keep it to half an hour doing it online like we're doing it now. But we do these daily, Mondays through Fridays, 8 o'clock Central. So you can come back tomorrow, bring a guest, make your $1,250 if you want. Okay, so let's see what other questions we have. Samantha says, if they already have a business registered with a state, but they need a new business address. Yeah, so we do have some other resources. We have what's called the cheap business address, Samantha, that takes and provides the business address without the rest of the scope of the grant. So that is available. If you need help with that, just maybe send us an email, call or text us, and we can help you navigate if you're needing something different than this grant package. All right, so Zachary's telling us about his personal credit, and that's fine, but we really don't want to spend too much time worrying about personal credit. Here, we want to focus on getting the business credible. So does credit matter? Yes, we want to have a strong business credit profile. We want to have at least an 80 Paydex score with Dun & Bradstreet, at least an 80 IntelliScore with Experian Business. You can check that, but we'll help you. That's part of the package. And that's free. Let's see. Tasha asks, how do you start a business account with a bank? Well, first we get, so the order is important, Tasha. So we'll get the business address, we'll file the Secretary of State, we'll get the EIN, and then after this third bullet, we'd be ready to get the business bank account open. But we can guide you through that. That's not a problem. We have about 40 different banks, credit unions, and alternative lenders that we're working in collaboration with that have a shared vision and mission of helping start and grow small businesses. So we can help you with funding, of course, as well as getting the bank account. Tasha asked, can you use your home address? Well, we talked about earlier, if you use a home address, it's not credible. And so that would be a mistake, and that would keep you from getting most types of funding. Zachary asked, where do we go from here? Want to go to chapmanloanprogram.org. It's a two-step process. You've kind of completed step one by going through today's Zoom. Step two, click on that to get engaged and plug and roll. Bevan asked about teaching. And so, yes, also on chapmanloanprogram.org, you go down to the bottom of the page on resources, and you can click there to become one of our distribution partners and start teaching. You'll have, if you're going to teach this, you'll have a customized version of this. So obviously it has your information, and you can go out and teach it in person or online. All right, so we're at the 30-minute point. So let's wrap it up. What we covered today is a new grant that helps small businesses get funded by being legally and ethically credible on paper. We went through the 10 mistakes to talk about things that keep you from getting funding. And then we conversely talked about how the startup program takes care of all of that for you. It includes these benefits listed at the bottom left. Additional information is on chapmanloanprogram.org. And we'd love to work with you. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Bye-bye.